Well, hi, Dr. Stanley.
Good to be here, Alissa. How are you?
I'm wonderful. I'm so happy to see you, meet you. Thank you for coming to Mason Exhibitions Arlington. Um, I invited you to come talk with us as a part of the current exhibition, All Black Everything. And I said everything as the local vernacular for everything, which deals with Afrofuturism and Afronostalgia in pop culture, and just with the kind of um, celebrity of Sun Ra in the realm of Afrofuturism, of which you have a large bandwidth of knowledge, and wanted to just chat with you today.
Okay, let's do that.
Yeah. So, who are you? What's your story? How did you get into all of this?
Well, I can honestly say that I was doing Afrofuturism before there was such a term, right? The term is fairly new, 1993. Mark Deary, who actually is a white literary critic, coined that term to refer to um, science fiction and speculative fiction that features Black protagonists and scenarios that draw heavily from the Black cultural experience. When I say I was doing Afrofuturism before there really was a term, I signed up early for George Clinton's mothership. In 1998, I co-authored an oral history that was published by Avon Books with late David Mills, local music historian Larry Alexander, and a West Coast musicologist named Eris Wilson. And my dad, who's not living anymore, he didn't really understand why it was a significant project until I told him, well, think of P-Funk as kind of like the Black Beatles. They're just foundational to everything that's going on in pop music. Which, I love my dad because he was a cynic. He said, well, that means you're going to get rich, right? Didn't exactly turn out that way. I've been teaching at George Mason University, wearing a number of different hats, teaching a number of different courses since about 2003, 2004, that school year. And I have a deep investment in audio culture per se, what human beings can share with each other about their reality through sound, sonic expression. Sun Ra is, by most people's accounts, the musical standard bearer for this whole idea of Afrofuturism. And then you have to ask yourself the question, well, why? How is that? Why is that the case? Why is it him? How did he come to be that figure when we talk about this projection of Black experience into a future imaginary? What I can tell you, and I thought about this driving here, like how can you take a life that was as diverse and potent and vast as Sun Ra's and try to give it to you in a comprehensible soundbite? But we can say that Sun Ra was an extremely unique being. We can say that after many, many decades of keeping his earthly origins obscure deliberately, we can say that Sun Ra was born like a human being, as a human being, in 1914, May 22nd, 1914. We can say that he was born in Birmingham in a fairly typical working class situation. His house was literally on the railroad tracks. His mother, with some support from her mother, raised Herman. That was his given name, Herman Blunt, with wages from waiting tables at the diner at the train station. He was an early musical prodigy. Received his first piano I think it was his 9th or 10th birthday. And by the time he was in high school, he was leading the bands that were the most sought after bands in the Black community of Birmingham, where we're talking about big band music, we're talking about orchestras for which music has to be meticulously composed and arranged, and we're talking about a young man, a loner, who had an advanced understanding of how to function in that capacity that was known throughout town. He was the guy. He was the go-to guy for the best of what that genre had to offer. We can say that this young man, when he was sent draft notices for World War II, tried to ignore them. He was resolute in his opposition to any war, including that war, the war that is often called the quote-unquote good war. I'm not sure that such a thing really exists. Yeah. And on top of that, he also felt like it was an extreme misalignment to send a human, a gentle human, whose commitments were entirely to beauty and creation, out to do the work of killing, the work of battle, warfare. As you might imagine, this didn't go too well for the young draft resistor. And he was, in fact, what's the word you say? He actually went through the criminal justice system and spent some period of time incarcerated at something like a work camp for conscientious objectives. And Birmingham is, at the time it was a steel city. It's very much a city. Even though it's in the South, it's very much an urban setting. And the work camp where they sent Sun Ra and these other conscientious objectors was off in the mountains of Pennsylvania someplace. And he had a lot of epiphanies about nature there and humanity's relationship with and enfoldment within nature that would prove to be formative in his later life as an artist. He gets back after his brief period of confinement, gets back to Birmingham, and the community, they hadn't stood with him when he took his stand against Uncle Sam and induction into the war. And he was really kind of embittered at especially the Black community of Birmingham. And he fairly quickly after his return to Birmingham set out for Chicago. And in Chicago, Sun Ra begins working with Fletcher Henderson. Henderson is not a household name, but you have to see him at the very beginning of the lineage of big band leaders that spawned people like Duke Ellington, Count Basie, even Billy Eckstine, names that were much more popular, I think, ultimately than Fletcher Henderson's. So he joined Henderson's band as an arranger and piano player, helped the band with its rehearsals. And from there, and I'm compressing a lot of detailed information. From there, he forms first as a trio, the orchestra. Mm-hmm. And to make this, condensed biography, bring it on home, Sun Ra leaves the planet. We don't like to say that he died. We say he left the planet. He showed up, and then he left. And Sun Ra left the planet in 1993. His band, the Sun Ra Orchestra, under the direction of one of those first orchestra members from the late 40s, early 50s, Marshall Allen, the maestro Marshall Allen, is still performing. They'll be performing, he's 99 years old. They'll be performing on May 25th at a club in Baltimore, Maryland. They'll be performing on Sun Ra's birthday in Philadelphia. Sun Ra was a genius, and his genius was more than music, even if music is obviously the most conspicuous and unambiguous part of his, endowments as a very special human
Yeah. And so in looking at one of different documents, like you said, that the term Afrofuturism wasn't kind of coined then, but he's like I said before, kind of like the icon, the celebrity of that term. Like what and how and why?
being. Sun Ra was digging on the future when all we had to work with in terms of pop culture were comic books, Buck Rogers, stuff like that. Sun Ra was an early adopter of any music-related technology. At the
he made his own instruments, right?
He made his own instruments. He had instruments made for him. He was the first jazz artist, popular music artist of any kind to use electronic keyboards within his work. The early recording possibilities were really quite crude. There was something called a wire recorder that, instead of recording onto a neatly spooled magnetic tape, recorded on lengths of wire, and they were very short recordings. You'd have to, for a rehearsal session, you'd have to use many of these wires, but he did it. Everything that came out, he wanted it as soon as it came out. When Bob Moog developed his mini Moog synthesizer, which brought synthesis late in the 60s to popular musicians everywhere, Sun Ra got one of the prototypes. He was invited to the factory, pick out what you think you want to play and tell me how it works. Tell me what's wrong with it.
Mm-hmm. The guinea pig.
That's right.
Yeah.
Always Sun Ra was gesturing towards possible realities and pointing out beyond the bleak realities of his existence as a Black person in segregated America.
Mm-hmm.
Birmingham had a reputation as being the most segregated city in the United States of America. It says a lot.
Yep.
He talked about space from very early on.
Space is the place.
Space is the place. While he was in Teachers College, just outside of Alabama, of Birmingham, he said, and it was a part of his lore, that he was transported to Saturn and was given instructions on what he was supposed to do to help the people of this planet.
Mm-hmm.
Preposterous. He said he was taken there through something called transmolecularization. So it wasn't a rocket ship or anything like that. It was just his energetic essence.
Beam me up, Scotty.
Something like that. And, Sun Ra said completely absurd things in a way that was deadpan serious. And it threw you off.
Mm-hmm.
It threw you off. It put you in a place where you had to, well, maybe he knows what he's talking about. But there was so much authority rested in his really unusually large musical competency that I think people kind of looked at Sun Ra and said, well, he definitely knows something about music. Maybe he does know something about this other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
These connections between our future and our ancient past. Saturn.
What did he bring?
Egypt.
What did he bring back from Saturn? Like what did he ever really convey what was happening in these other realms?
I can remember him saying that he described clothing that was there, clothing for sale, I guess, that was there, that was unique and remarkable. He talked constantly about his mission, his service to the Creator. He used the word Creator much more than he used the word God. And it has to do something with happiness in our development. You know, he would see our state today. Excuse me. He would see our condition today with AI on the horizon and all of this technology and digital mediation of all aspects of life. He sees what we're doing as a form of arrested development. And the proof is the prevalence of war. That advanced people don't swag around bragging about their toys while they're slaughtering each other. The way we step over the homeless people, those are the people that lost in the game of capitalism. And we step over them, we step around their tents. We act like we don't notice their misery.
Yeah.
He says, well, this shows that you're not advanced people. Your hearts are very small. You have some clever ideas that you've gotten as much out of as you can. Can you do anything else? This was the kinds of questions that Sun Ra put on the table.
So what kind of societal change do you think with AI, like you described, the current state of life today with technology, which was what he was kind of very focused on, what kind of societal change do you think he's making use it now?
Let's not say that he was focused on technology.
Yeah.
Because I think we have a future that is based on the ascendance of technology. And a Sun Ra future would be a future that's based on the ascendancy of some kind of deep truth about human life and about our social relations with each other. If this future, it's a fake future to me, but if this future that we're all so excited about is based on some kind of digital fluency, some kind of engineering horizon that we've approached, then I think the Sun Ra future would have more to do with justice, with a calculus that measures how much is lost by the human beings that are confined and condemned to conditions of poverty and marginalization. That I think Sun Ra was acutely aware that there is something incredible within each of us, but that our lives under this kind of order, this money-based order, competition-based order, tends to obscure and distort those enormous individualized gifts. Sun Ra believed in precision, discipline, not freedom. The rhetoric of freedom, which was prevalent during the time that Sun Ra was taking his name to the world, we were all talking about freedom and equality.
We still are.
Still are. Sun Ra would say, well, you don't need freedom. This is freedom. You've got freedom. Freedom is, 200-300 teenagers finding their way onto the north side of Chicago and running amok and having a smash and grab party. That's freedom. Sun Ra was like, point your life in the direction of beauty and truth and pursue it daily with precision and with discipline. And it's hard for people. I think it's hard for people to really hear that in Sun Ra, to really hear the amount of work, not job, but work. I make a distinction between the two ideas. But the amount of work that goes into living a good life, precision, discipline. Sun Ra was, he was infamous really for these just marathon rehearsals. I mean, there was a sense in which the living room in that house on Morton Street that was the bass for the orchestra and for Sun Ra, where he lived with 3, 4, 5 band members at any given time during, let's say, the last third of his life, his performative life. There was a sense in which it was always rehearsal in that living room. You know, men would literally wake up, grab their axe, go downstairs, figure out where they're at in the music, and they'd play. If they had to go to work, they'd put the axe down, go drive a cab, ring a register, come back, play. And Sun Ra, he didn't really sleep like a normal person.
What do you mean, Henry?
I mean, he would, in the middle of rehearsal, at the piano, doze off. And somebody would stay in the room to make sure that there would be musicians there when he came to. He was always reading, watching television. He digested the news, talking. In my research for my book, I found tapes of Sun Ra speaking to his band members at rehearsals. And there's just some great stuff there. Just some great, because he's, you know, you talk about a person who in front of a microphone is unfiltered. You get him where he thinks he's just talking to his people.
Right.
And it's amazing what the man was capable of saying. I think he, I don't want to oversell him. Just come towards him and then you'll figure him out. Take a couple of steps. His music is everywhere.
Yeah.
YouTube has plenty of opportunities to listen to Sun Ra. Take him literally first, and that will confound you because you won't be able to reconcile A and not A and get them in the same frame. And then the work that you do as you take in this literal Sun Ra will allow you to see kind of over and beyond that. And that's when you get to the parts of his idea that you can really work with.
How did you meet him?
There was a concert at the old 930 Club, which was at F Street, 930 F Street. And there was a brother in the community, Kwabena Ras I, we called him, who I think he's living now in Ohio. And he was there, and I had heard that he kind of knew some orchestra members. He made sandwiches, and he would take, reggae artists and jazz artists would come to town, and he'd go to the show and vend his sandwiches, his health food. And I remember him standing by the margin of the stage, and he hooked his finger like that. And he said, "You want to meet Sun Ra?" I said, "Yeah, I want to meet Sun Ra." And he messed me up. Like I spent the rest of that week trying to figure out not so much who Sun Ra was, but what he was. Like, is that real? Because Sun Ra would do a thing backstage where it was kind of like somebody giving a lecture, not necessarily to anybody.
A sermon?
Well, I don't want to sound disrespectful, but the only thing I could compare it to is you walk past, we talked about the homeless people. Well, sometimes those people will give you a monologue or a soliloquy on the street corner.
They got things to say.
They have things to say. And so Sun Ra would just start talking, and people could come and go. I learned real early on, you didn't really want to engage him with a question. You could ask other people ask questions and watch what happened to them and get as much of questioning Sun Ra as you needed to. You'd back up and watch. He stepped into it, didn't you? Let's see what he does with your little question. A wise human being. Sun Ra, we're in this zone now where we are catching up to ideas about gender equality and the straitjacket of heteronormality, and we're catching up to that. We're breaking free from it. Great. But Sun Ra, from very early on, was an avowed asexual. I'm not this, I'm not that. I don't have time for that. I have time for making music and fulfilling my duties to the Creator. And he complained. He complained about his assignment, about, I got to fix this. Look at this. Who's running this? Really? So yeah, an avowed asexual. He didn't, it's like, that's a waste of time. That's a waste of time. Make music, do something creative. Got enough people, do something else. A large being.
Yeah. But so how did I know you're a musician as well. So how did this kind of this community and everything kind of really cycle into what you do and what you're doing and
I'm a sound
researching
artist
and
who presents his products in a musical context. The first time someone called me a musician in print, I did not want to leave the house.
Okay.
I said, musicians know stuff and they can do stuff. And all I can do is make noise. It's careful noise, it's deliberate noise, it's crafty noise.
Mm-hmm.
But for something to be truly musical, it must be relatable to conventions, cultural conventions that belong to music. Music is organized according to rules and conventions that are similar to grammar and syntax.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to do any of this stuff. I don't ever have to think about a circle of fifths or what. I was doing something at the Kennedy Center.
Mm-hmm.
This is funny. And my friend Janelle Lapine, cellist, we're playing this house. And it was, I forget the name of the project, but it was a physical house designed to look like a shotgun shack from New Orleans.
Yep.
That was installed into the courtyard of the Kennedy Center. And the house had been built with sensors and synthesizers and touch responded things all through the house.
Mm-hmm.
So they invited a bunch. I think Lane Garrett had something to do with this. Luke Stewart invited me, let me get that straight. And a bunch of us were just kind of given the house, and they turned on some cameras and some microphones and said, okay, make something happen.
Yep.
So Janelle said, so we started, and Janelle said, Thomas, we're all on E. I said, okay, and I turned some knobs, and she said, yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
So that's what I do. And I do that because I think that art and sonic art in particular can expand people's imaginations enough so that we can conceive of the real future.
Mm-hmm.
The real future is as radical in terms of social organization as the faux future, the future that capitalism gave us, as miraculous as it seems in terms of exotic technologies. It's like, oh, AI, all of these things. Wow, I got another way that I can order a sandwich on my phone,
Right.
y'all. Wow.
And at Mason, we have the robot that will bring it.
Oh my gosh, I love the robots. I swear I've
It's so
seen
hard
them.
to walk around.
I've
like,
seen
oh,
them
my
talking to
goodness.
each other. We gotta be careful. I've seen those things come up.
They've been like,
Yeah, having
like you're
conversations.
bad tempered. Just kidding.
The real future is warless, rapeless, moneyless, and I know this is gonna hurt some feelings. It's stateless. We don't need that kind. We don't need, these colossal institutions to tax us and tell us what to do. We can waste our own money and we can figure out what to do. I think that Sunrise inviting our consciousness, our spirituality even, to expand beyond the really flimsy and rather small frame that is given to us by religion and the state. That's hard to talk to people about. People are fine with new technologies, but they're very much anchored in their assumptions about what it means to be humanly social.
Mm-hmm.
So you heard me earlier talk about this distinction between job and work. I work, and it's a job. And you work for the same people I work for. It's a job. They pay you. You look very nice and you were here on time.
Yay.
But you wouldn't have done that if it hadn't been a job. Work is different from a job. Work is your mission. Work is the thing you would do even if there was no money riding on it. Believe it or not, and this is Marxian, unfortunately, for better or worse, there's a way of configuring society so that everybody does what they're good at and what they enjoy doing, and that those things are done in exactly the proportions that satisfy legitimate human needs. There's somebody out there, if you need a carrot, that will lovingly grow you the most amazing carrot and bring it to your door so that you can tell them, man, your carrots are out of sight. Wow, what you do with carrots. I know, I'm gonna mention my friend Phoebe Barth. I shouldn't touch the microphone, Steven, sorry. My friend Phoebe Barth is an acupuncturist. Phoebe, sometimes you go to see Phoebe, and sometimes the insurance would pay for it, and sometimes it wouldn't.
Yeah.
But she wanted to help people, and she would do that without economic compensation.
Mm-hmm.
So get all that stuff out of the picture and see who we are. Our lives are short. Our lives are short. And we should all be mindful of how much time is wasted in pursuit of money and prestige and these ideas about accomplishment and achievement that are programmed into us. So a lot of what I'm doing with my sound art, and please listen to my sound art. Where's the camera?
How do we find you? Yeah.
Yeah.
Plug.
Eat Bushmeat sound at Bandcamp. I'm also on SoundCloud if you want some free stuff, but go buy my music at Bandcamp. Eatbushmeat.bandcamp.com. Bushmeat. Bushmeat. Yes. Nutrition that is not domesticated. I'm not domesticated.
No?
No.
Wow.
I am. I am.
Feral.
We need some feralness,
There you
some
go.
wildness.
Yeah. Some balance.
Some balance.
Uh-huh. And what are you working on now? What are you researching or working on?
I got a bunch of projects.
What's your not job? What are you working on?
There's a drummer in Austin, Texas, named Bevis Griffin. And he's known within Texas and especially within Austin as being very much integral to the formative years of rock and roll. I'm helping him take his story to a book format, and we've been doing some great interviews and examinations of rock and roll history together for the last, I want to say about 5 years. Great individual, and I think we're close to actually getting a contract for his life story. I'm also working on a book that is kind of a follow-up to my Sun Ra book.
Purchased where? No.
Come to my webpage or send me an email or something. I'd rather you not go to, I'm rather surprised to find out that Amazon still has copies of my book, but I'm trying to do them all now, just, directly to people through me. And I'm working on a follow-up that is called Ghost Dancing with Khepra.
Okay.
2 ideas there. Khepra is the ancient Kemetic, or we say Egyptian deity, who was depicted in the form of a scarab beetle, precisely a dung beetle. And that beetle, that cosmic insect, rolls the ball of the sun, the sphere of the sun, across the arc of the heavens daily, and keeps time moving, keeps time refreshed. That idea I'm combining with the idea introduced by a Native American spiritualist, a Paiute medicine man named Wovoka, in the mid-19th century. And he said, the ghost dance was kind of a round dance, similar to other Native American round dances. But he said, brothers and sisters, if we dance this dance, we will find underneath our feet all of the relatives that the whites have slaughtered, all of the game that they have destroyed, and all of the land that they have defiled and made unclean. It's there waiting for us. We just have to dance this dance, the ghost dance. So I'm trying to bring those two ideas together. It's a positive eschatology. Things really are falling apart. But depending on which side of some line that I don't want to get into a lot of specifying where that line is, things may be falling up. Things may be falling up. You can look at the dysfunction of January 6th as a horrible crisis. I mean, my goodness, those people sure don't know how to behave themselves. Or you can look at it as symptomatic of an empire in decline. I am, as an intellectually liberated human, I'm free to identify with whatever political structures I choose to or don't choose to. And I honestly think, I lived long enough to see the Soviet Union fall, collapse, completely disappear. Who's to say this mansion is any less temporary than that one? We black folks, what we know about mansions. Malcolm gave us a little parable about wind and embers. I think the good stuff for all human beings, there's so much. America is really good at keeping the suffering that it inflicts on the rest of the world out of sight and at arm's distance.
PR agents.
We don't want to know. We don't want to see where the elements, the materials, the rare earth materials that make our little devices that we love so much, we don't want to see where they come from. We don't want to see what is done to men, women, and children and the land on which they have to live so that we can have our cool phones, our cool cars, materials. So we don't have to see it. Every now and then some shaft of light makes its way in and allows you to see, oh gosh, really, that's what it is? That's what it costs? That's what's going on? But most of the time, that's not on our mind. And then people sell us, I'm gonna get myself in trouble now.
Oh boy.
In the name of some kind of social resistance, they sell us these ways of balkanizing struggle. Balkanizing, breaking it into tiny pieces, the struggle for justice, so that I really shouldn't be, but so concerned about what's happening in Palestine right now. I should be concerned about what's happening in Anacostia, PG County, which I am, but I am also concerned about what's happening in Gaza, Jenin, Ramallah, because justice is one cloth, it's one fabric, it's one web. Mm-hmm. It isn't just about people. It's about our relationship with a living planet. That we're roommates with all these other beings.
It's a cycle. They always say, history repeats itself. And there's a lot of ties between Afronostalgia and Afrofuturism about Sankofa. So go back and get it, right? So what is your Sankofa? What are you feeling society or the world, what are the cycle that we're on? What do we keep looking for to go back?
It's a good question, Alissa. It's a good question, because I hadn't thought about that question, right. Believe it or not. Other people seem to be well prepared to think about that question for me. We talked on the phone about my personal consternation with the amount of Afro past that seems to be always kind of clinging to these versions of the Afro-future.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved your paradigm of taking nostalgia and looking at it through one lens, and taking futurism and looking at it through another lens. Good. Africa. I believe the death toll is now up to about 400, 500 people. It's hard to count dead people while you're burying them. But in eastern Congo this week, earlier this week, there was flooding that was related to a series of unusually strong rainstorms. We know about those trends happening globally.
Global warming.
I saw
It's real.
men and women digging through the shattered remains of their homes, looking for their children. And I saw them face television cameras and very matter-of-factly saying, you know, I just have to recover one more body and then I can bury them all. Wow. Meekness. Meekness. Where in our swagacious present can you find models of meekness? They said the meek shall inherit the earth. What do we know about being humble? What do we know about facing our limitations in the eye and saying, I still have to be good. I still have to do good work. I still have to be happy. That's the part I want to bring back. I don't do too much. I'll be honest with you. I don't do too much with kings and queens. Remember when we were kings, when we were queens? You've heard that rhetoric. Mm-hmm. This is a way of taking young Black children who have been painfully alienated from the reality of their African history. Their history as sons and daughters of Africa. Okay, I understand that. But I'm a realist. I've studied history, and I know the kings and queens didn't get on the boat. The kings and queens were counting the coin. You know? Barrels of rum, bolts of silk, guns that never worked as well as the Europeans. That was the price for Black bodies. And the kings and queens, they did really well. So I don't look to those big, when we're looking for models of our pride as African people, I look to the Khoisan, people that used to be called the Bushmen, Kalahari Desert, fairly naked people, fairly minimal technology, fairly horizontal social organization. They don't have a big chief. They work things out. They don't have those tiers of, oh yes, God chose that bloodline. That shall be the, no man, they don't roll with that. That stuff is false. That stuff is, so yeah, I hear all this stuff and these great kingdoms and the great kings and all this. I'm like, yeah, but what about the forest people? What about the people that know how to live in Mother Earth without defiling her? Can we learn from them? Bring it
back
forward? Mm-hmm. We're not going to retire the technological aspect of our lives, but we could certainly modulate it, tone it down, refocus it, and do a lot better for everybody. My friend Peter Lee, another fine Mason student, and he's a brilliant young man. We were kicking it, and we kind of simultaneously come up with this concept called universal basic dignity. You've heard of universal basic income? Mm-hmm. How about there's just a line below which we won't let a fellow human fall below? Mm-hmm. We just won't. We'll figure it out. Say we look at the welfare state, it just makes people into lazy, Stop it.
Or how they were measuring happiness across around the world, like certain cities have a higher GD of happiness.
How did we do here?
I don't think we've
I
prepared so well. I was going to say, like, you know, how are we measuring, you know?
I drove here,
all these
and none of those people were happy,
right.
I can tell you.
Okay. So I think I just wanted to.
I talk too much.
No.
Alyssa.
This is great. This is just part. We're going to have a little pause, and then you know we'll have part two if the artists are on their way too. But I think I wanted to see if you wanted to add any things that we may have missed in the regard of just because I know I invited you. I know when I talked to you about Afrofuturism, you were like, I don't really like it, or you know, you seem a little bit like, you know.
Well, here's my thing.
And I guess my question also, if you kind of close it out to get your response to that, is also, and a lot of this again with artists, but why is the aesthetic so in space? Why is Afrofuturism so far, physically so far away?
That's a good question. I'm both fascinated by and repulsed by the way that American media fixates on the British royalty.
Mm-hmm.
So my understanding is as soon as Her Majesty was declared dead, at that point, Prince Charles became king, but it took a while for them to get the party together, the ceremony, the ritual that actually installs him into the kingship, pomp and circumstance. I mean, I know there was, because I was a little kid in history class and they told you there was a war, and the war was because the British monarchy was a bunch of, you know, they were no good. So the British, the French, and there were some people from Belgium, Portuguese had a hand in it, Spanish. They went out and they took the world. They took this planet. What we call colonialism, and tried to dress up as an awkward, socio-political transitional period or something like that. It was an organized criminal conspiracy that took this planet. Now, Sunrise said space is the place. If you're going to do something, you have to be able to do it somewhere. If all of the possibilities offered by planet Earth, third stone from the sun, have been foreclosed, embargoed by private property and all of its contradictions and thorny enforcement mechanisms, because that's what the police are for. Europe stole the world, and the police exist to make sure you don't steal it back. So we fantasize about space because we want to be good people, because we imagine it to be a zone of possibility where there are many, many planets, and we don't have to all be crowded up trying to rob each other and kill each other on this little planet. There's giant gas planets. There's moons that orbit around planets that are completely habitable. There's all sorts of possibilities that we can't really fully anticipate, but in an imaginary space, we can put ourselves there, and at least in that imaginary narrative scenario, we can walk as free humans on a planet that hasn't already been stolen by Europe.
Whole new beginning.
A whole new beginning.
Blank slate. Okay. All right.
Did that answer the question?
Yeah, I'll take it.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks for your time today and chatting.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for letting me talk so
Thank you
long.
for sharing your knowledge. Appreciate it.
Appreciate being here.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah.